I turned off the TV in my own living room and told my mother and my sister to pack their things. Not tomorrow. Not after dinner. Right then. My wife stood at the stove with our feverish little girl on her hip, stirring a pot with one hand, while my mother and sister sat on my couch, scrolling through their phones like they were waiting for room service. For a second, nobody moved. The only sound was the spoon tapping the side of the pot and my daughter stuffed up breathing against my wife's shoulder. Then my mother looked up at me and said, "Excuse me." I looked at her. Then I looked at my sister. "You heard me," I said. "Pack up and leave my house, now." That was the moment the room went silent. And I mean silent in a way you don't forget. Not peaceful silence, not awkward silence. The kind of silence that tells you every person in the room just realized something had broken and it wasn't going back together the same way. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Mark Ellison. I was 52 years old then, running a small HVAC company in Plano, Texas. Nothing fancy. 2 trucks, 3 employees, and enough late nights in attics and crawl spaces to make my knees complain every morning before my coffee was even done brewing. I wasn't rich, but I worked hard. My wife Rachel and I had built a simple life in a 3-bedroom house on a quiet street with oak trees, cracked sidewalks, and neighbors who knew when your trash cans were still out too late. Rachel was 41. She had a soft way about her, but she was not weak. People made that mistake sometimes. She taught preschool before Lily was born, and she had the kind of patience I used to joke should be regulated by the federal government. Our daughter Lily had just turned 2. Big brown eyes, curly hair that never stayed clipped back. She was funny in the way toddlers are, funny serious about crackers, suspicious of socks, and completely convinced the moon belonged to her. That week I had been down in Houston on a commercial repair job that was supposed to take 2 days and turned into 5. A rooftop unit failed at a medical office building, then one part was delayed, then another contractor didn't show. Same old story. I spent 5 nights in a business hotel off the interstate eating bad takeout, talking to Rachel over the phone while Lily cried in the background. Rachel kept saying, "We're okay. Just get the job done." I believed her. That was my first mistake. My mother Diane had come to stay with us for a few days after her apartment had some plumbing work done. My younger sister Karen came with her because according to Mom, Karen was between situations. Karen was 46 and had been between situations since the Bush administration. She had ideas, always ideas, reselling things online, starting a boutique, flipping furniture, selling supplements. One month it was vintage purses, the next it was home organization products, though she couldn't organize a napkin drawer without turning it into a hostage crisis. Still, she was family. That sentence has excused a lot of bad behavior in this world. I pulled into the driveway around 6:30 on a Thursday evening. I remember the light because it was that flat Texas summer light, not pretty exactly, just hot and tired looking. My shirt stuck to my back. I had stopped at Buc-ee's on the way up I-45 and bought Rachel a bag of those cinnamon pecans she liked, figuring I'd walk in, kiss my wife, hug my daughter, shower, and maybe eat something that didn't come in a styrofoam box. The first thing I noticed when I opened the door was the smell. Not Rachel's lemon candle. Not dinner, though something was cooking. It was cheap perfume, sweet, sharp, heavy, Karen's perfume. It hit me before I even stepped inside. Then I saw the living room. My recliner, the one Rachel bought me for my 50th birthday, the one I sat in after long jobs with Lily asleep on my chest, had been shoved into the corner near the window. In its place stood a tall metal shelving unit, the kind you see in a storage room stacked with cardboard boxes and plastic bins. Some had labels, some had shipping tape. One had a roll of bubble wrap sitting on top like it belonged there. For a moment I just stared. It didn't feel like my house. The TV was loud. Some daytime courtroom show was blaring, even though it was evening. My mother sat upright on the sofa, glasses low on her nose phone in one hand. Karen was stretched out beside her bare feet on the coffee table, thumbs moving fast across her screen. Neither of them got up. Neither of them said, "Welcome home." Then I saw Rachel. She was in the kitchen standing at the stove. Her hair was tied in a messy knot and her face looked pale under the overhead light. Lily was on her hip in a little pajama shirt, cheeks flushed, nose red, her head tucked against Rachel's neck. Rachel was stirring something with one hand. "Hey," she said softly when she saw me. "Not thank God you're home." Not I missed you. Just hey, like she didn't have enough strength for a bigger word. I set my duffel bag down. Is Lily still sick? I asked. Rachel nodded. Fever came back after nap. I gave her Tylenol around 5. My mother didn't look up. Kids get fevers, Mark. You two panic over every little thing. Karen snorted. She's fine. She was running around earlier. Rachel's hand tightened slightly around the spoon. I saw it. Maybe another day I would have missed it. Maybe if I hadn't been exhausted. Maybe if the house still looked like ours. Maybe if my wife didn't look like she was about to fold in half right there by the stove. But I saw it. I walked over to the TV and pressed the power button. The room went dead quiet. Karen looked up like I had slapped her. Hey, she said, we were watching that. No, I said. You were sitting in my living room while my wife cooked dinner with a sick child in her arms. My mother's mouth tightened. You just walked in, Mark. Don't start. I'm not starting, I said. I'm finishing something I should have handled before I left. Rachel turned toward me. Mark. Her voice had warning in it, but also fear. Not fear of me. Fear of what would happen next. That hurt worse. I looked at my mother and sister again. You two need to pack your things. Karen blinked. What? You heard me. My mother stood slowly like she was trying to make her age part of the argument. I am your mother. I know exactly who you are. And this is how you speak to me. No, I said. This is how I speak to 2 grown women who watched my wife struggle and did nothing. Karen scoffed. Oh, please, Rachel likes doing everything herself. She's particular. Rachel looked down at the pot. That little movement told me plenty. I pointed toward the hallway. Guest room, start packing. My mother stared at me. Her face was red now, but her voice stayed controlled. You'll regret this. Maybe she expected me to soften. I usually did. That was the problem. I looked past her at the boxes stacked where my chair used to be. I looked at my wife still holding Lily, still trying not to cry in front of people who had made a habit out of using her silence against her. No, I said. I think I'm done regretting the wrong things. Nobody answered. Karen grabbed her phone off the couch and stormed toward the guest room. My mother followed slower, muttering something about disrespect and family loyalty. Rachel turned off the burner. For a few seconds, we just stood there. Then Lily lifted her head, saw me, and reached out one small hand. Daddy, she rasped. I took her carefully from Rachel's arms. She was hot against my chest. Rachel leaned both hands on the counter, like the room had finally stopped spinning, and she didn't trust her legs yet. I wanted to ask a dozen questions. What happened while I was gone? Why didn't you tell me? How long has this been going on? But when I looked around that room, the shelves, the boxes, my chair in the corner, the tired woman I loved standing in her own kitchen like a guest, I understood one thing clearly. My mother and sister hadn't just overstayed. They had moved in around my wife, and I had walked through the door just in time to see what I should have seen much sooner. I didn't sleep much that night. Lily's fever broke sometime around 2 in the morning. I remember because I was sitting on the edge of our bed with a damp washcloth in my hand, checking her forehead every few minutes like I could will the number down. When it finally cooled, I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Rachel had fallen asleep, sitting up against the headboard, one hand still resting on Lily's back. Even asleep, her shoulders looked tight. That stayed with me. In the morning, everything felt quieter, not peaceful, just held back like a conversation waiting to happen. My mother and sister stayed in the guest room longer than usual. No TV, no loud voices, no perfume drifting down the hallway. Rachel moved around the kitchen slowly, like her body hadn't caught up with the fact that she could move at her own pace again. I poured coffee and handed her a mug. You should sit, I said. She gave a small smile. I'm okay. I didn't argue, not yet. Let's take Lily to urgent care, I said, just to be sure. Rachel nodded. I already checked. There's a place off Preston that takes our insurance. Of course she had. We drove there just after 8. The waiting room looked like every urgent care in America, beige walls, a muted TV in the corner, a fish tank that needed cleaning, and a row of people staring at their phones like it was the only way to pass time without losing their minds. Lily slept in Rachel's arms most of the time we were there. Every now and then she stirred, pressed her face into Rachel's shoulder, and went still again. The doctor said it was likely a viral infection. Flu test came back negative. Keep her hydrated, keep up with fever reducers, and call us if it spikes again. he said already halfway out the door. Standard. On the way home, Rachel looked out the window. I didn't want you to come back to all this, she said. All what I asked. She hesitated. That she said finally, last night. I kept my eyes on the road. That didn't start last night. No answer. When we pulled into the driveway, there was a stack of boxes by the garage door. New ones. Labels printed, not handwritten. Shipping codes, barcodes, the whole thing. I picked one up before we went inside. It was heavier than it looked. What's in these? I asked. Rachel shifted Lily on her hip. I'm not sure. Karen said they're inventory. For what? She sells things online. I know that I said. I don't know what that means anymore. Rachel didn't answer. Inside, my mother was at the kitchen table with her coffee. Karen stood by the counter taping up another box like she had a deadline. Neither of them said good morning. I set the box down harder than I needed to. We need to talk, I said. Karen didn't look up. I'm working. In my house, I said. That got her attention. She sighed like I was interrupting something important. Look, I've got orders to fill. People already paid. With whose address? I asked. She rolled her eyes. It's just a shipping address, Mark. Relax. I turned to Rachel. Whose name is on it? Rachel froze for half a second. That was enough. Rachel, I said softer now. She set Lily in her high chair and reached for a towel, wiping her hands slowly. It's my email, she said. At first, Karen said it would be easier to set up. At first, I asked. Karen jumped in. It's temporary. I'm switching everything over. When she shrugged. Soon. My mother stirred her coffee. You're making a big deal out of nothing. She's just trying to get on her feet. At my wife's expense, I asked. She agreed to it, my mother said. I looked at Rachel. Did you? I asked. Rachel swallowed. I thought it would just be a few packages. I nodded once. How many is it now? I asked Karen. She crossed her arms. I don't keep count like that. I walked past her and opened the cabinet drawer by the fridge. Bills, receipts, junk mail. I started sorting. Mark, my mother said, warning in her voice. I ignored her. There were printed shipping labels, return slips, a small notebook with tracking numbers written in Rachel's handwriting. Not Karen's. Rachel's. I picked it up. You're the one managing this, I asked. Rachel shook her head quickly. No, I just wrote things down so nothing got lost. Because someone had to, I said. Karen let out a laugh. Oh my God, you're acting like this is some kind of crime. I'm acting like my wife is running your business while taking care of our sick kid, I said. That's what I'm acting like. My mother set her cup down. Watch your tone. No, I said. You watch yours. You've been here a week and my house looks like a storage unit. It's called helping families, she snapped. Helping would be cooking a meal, I said. Helping would be holding your granddaughter so her mother can sit down for 10 minutes. Silence. Karen grabbed a roll of tape and slammed it on the counter. You don't understand how hard I'm trying to make something work here. In my garage, I said. In your garage, she shot back, which you barely use. I stepped closer. I built that garage, I said quietly. I paid for this house, and you don't get to decide what I barely use. Rachel touched my arm. Mark. I took a breath. I wasn't going to lose control. Not like that. Where's the account registered? I asked Karen. She hesitated. That was new. Online, she said. That's not what I asked. My mother stood up. This conversation is over. No, I said. It's just getting started. I walked into the living room and picked up my phone. What are you doing? Karen asked. Checking something. I opened my email, typed Rachel's address into the search bar. It didn't take long. Order confirmations, shipping notices, customer messages, returns, complaints, all tied to Rachel. All tied to this house. I felt something settle in my chest. Not anger. Something colder. Karen, I said, did you register this business under Rachel's name? She didn't answer. My mother stepped in. It's just paperwork. It doesn't mean anything. It means liability, I said. It means if something goes wrong, it's on her. Karen threw her hands up. Nothing's going to go wrong. That's not the point, I said. Rachel leaned against the counter, her face pale again. I didn't know it would get this big, she said quietly. I believed her. That was the problem. I looked at the boxes again, the shelves. The way my house had been rearranged to fit something that wasn't supposed to be there. Then I thought about what Tom Jenkins had said over the fence last week before I left. "Looks like you've got a lot of traffic lately," he joked. At the time, I'd laughed it off. Now it didn't feel like a joke. I pulled up the security app on my phone. I didn't use it much. Installed it after a break-in down the street a couple years back, then forgot about it. Until now. I scrolled back. There they were. Clips from the past few days. Cars pulling up. Boxes being carried in and out. Karen at the door talking to people I didn't recognize. My mother standing behind her directing them toward the garage like she owned the place. I felt Rachel's eyes on me. "What is it?" she asked. I didn't answer right away. I just watched. And the more I watched, the clearer it became. This wasn't a favor. This wasn't temporary. This was a system. And it had been running in my house while I was out of town, while my wife was taking care of our child, while everyone assumed I wouldn't look too closely. I locked my phone and slipped it into my pocket. "We're not done with this," I said. Karen opened her mouth to argue. I held up a hand. "Not right now," I said, "but soon." I walked past the shelves again, past the boxes, past the place where my chair used to be. Rachel followed me into the hallway. "Mark," she said softly, "I didn't want to make things worse." I turned to her. "You didn't," I said. "They did." She looked like she wanted to believe that. I reached for her hand. "We're going to fix this," I said. And for the first time since I walked in the door the night before, I knew exactly what I meant. I waited until the house settled before I went back to the footage. Late afternoon drifted into evening, the kind of quiet you get when people are avoiding each other on purpose. Cabinets opened softer, doors closed slower. Even the TV stayed off. Rachel put Lily down for a nap and sat with me for a few minutes on the edge of the couch. Not the recliner still shoved in the corner behind those shelves, but close enough that our knees touched. "You don't have to do this alone," she said. I know I said, but I do need to see it for myself. She nodded, no argument. That was Rachel never pushing, even when she probably should. I opened the app and scrolled back to the day after I left for Houston. The first clip was ordinary. My mother on the porch waving at someone across the street. The next showed Karen carrying in a couple of small boxes. Nothing that would have set off alarms. I kept going. By day 2, the boxes got bigger. By day 3, there were more cars. Not delivery trucks, sedans, pickups, different plates, different people. Most of them stayed under 5 minutes. Day 4, the garage door was open almost all afternoon. Karen stood at a folding table just inside handing out packages like she was running a yard sale without the yard. My mother moved in and out of frame, pointing, organizing, telling people where to park. Rachel appeared only once. She stepped into the garage, said something I couldn't hear, then went back inside with Lily on her hip. Didn't come back out. I scrubbed forward. Another clip. Nighttime. The porch light was on. Karen stood outside with a man I didn't recognize. They were talking close like they didn't want to be heard. I turned up the volume. "I can do 10 units tonight," Karen was saying. "Cash is easier." The man nodded. "Same as before." "Yeah," she said. "Same setup." My mother stepped into frame behind her. "Keep it quick," she said. "We don't want neighbors asking questions." Something in my chest tightened. This wasn't just reselling a few things online. This was volume, movement, traffic, enough to get attention, enough to cause problems. I kept watching. A few minutes later, the same man carried 2 boxes from the garage to his truck. Karen followed him halfway down the driveway, counting something in her hand. My mother stood at the door, arms crossed, scanning the street. Like she was protecting it. Protecting their operation? In my house. I paused the video. Rachel was quiet beside me. "I didn't know about the cash," she said. "I believe you," I said. She rubbed her hands together, a nervous habit she had when she didn't want to say something out loud. "I told her it was getting too big," she said. "I told her we should stop using the garage." "What did she say?" "That you wouldn't mind," Rachel said. "That you'd understand once it started making money." I let out a breath. "That sounds like Karen," I said. Rachel shook her head slightly. "It wasn't just Karen," she said. I looked at her. "My mom?" I asked. Rachel hesitated, then she nodded. She said, "You wouldn't say no to family," Rachel said. "That you never do." That one landed. Not because it was new, because it was true. I'd spent most of my life being the one who didn't say no, the one who fixed things, paid for things, smoothed things over. It was easier than conflict, until it wasn't. I scrolled again. Another clip, afternoon. Karen inside the garage talking on her phone. Yeah, I can ship from here, she said. It's under Rachel's account, so it looks clean. I felt Rachel stiffen next to me. Karen kept talking. No, he's out of town. He won't check. He never checks. My mother's voice came from off camera. Just make sure everything's cleared out before he gets back, she said. We don't need drama. Karen laughed. He's not going to do anything, she said. He hates confrontation. I stopped the video. The room felt smaller. Rachel didn't look at me. I'm sorry, she said quietly. For what I asked. For not telling you sooner. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. You were taking care of Lily, I said, and dealing with them. That's not an excuse, she said. No, I said, it's a reason. We sat there for a minute. The kind of minute where you're both thinking the same thing, but neither one wants to say it first. Finally, I said it. They don't think I'll do anything. Rachel let out a small, humorless breath. They've never seen you like this, she said. I nodded. Neither have I said. That was the truth. I stood up and walked to the shelves. Up close, I could see the labels more clearly now. Product codes, item descriptions. Some marked fragile, others bulk. This wasn't a side hustle anymore. It was a business. One I hadn't agreed to. One that put my wife in the middle whether she wanted it or not. I picked up one of the boxes and turned it over. Rachel watched me. What are you thinking? She asked. I set the box back down. I'm thinking we end this the right way, I said. Which is, not yelling, I said. Not throwing them out in the middle of the night. Rachel tilted her head slightly. That's not what I expected you to say. I know, I said. It's not what I expected either. I walked back to the couch and grabbed my phone. Then what she asked. I opened my contacts. Then we make sure they understand exactly what they did, I said. And Hornetinerin. And what it costs. I tapped a name. Tom Jenkins. He picked up on the second ring. Mark, he said, you back from Houston? Yeah, I said. Listen, Tom, you still on the HOA board? There was a pause. Why, he asked. I glanced at the shelves again, at the boxes, at the place where my house had been turned into something else. Because I think I might need a favor, I said. Tom didn't answer right away. Then he said, come by tonight, we'll talk. I hung up and looked at Rachel. We're not doing this in pieces, I said. We're doing it once. She studied my face. You're sure, she asked. No, I said honestly, but I'm done pretending it's not happening. Rachel nodded slowly. Then for the first time in a while, she reached for my hand without hesitation. We stood there together in that room that didn't quite feel like ours yet. But it would. Soon. Because whatever they thought about me, about how far I'd go, about what I'd tolerate, they were about to find out just how wrong they'd been. And this time I wasn't going to look away. Sunday came quiet. Too quiet for a house that had carried so much tension all week. I kept the routine normal on purpose. Coffee at the same time. Pancakes for Lily when she woke up, even though she only ate half of one, and pushed the rest around her plate with a serious look like she was negotiating terms. Rachel moved easier that morning. Not fully relaxed, but not bracing for impact either. That was enough for me. Are you sure about tonight? She asked while I rinsed dishes. Yes, I said. You don't have to make it a thing. I set the plate in the rack. It's already a thing. I'm just finishing it. She watched me for a second, then nodded. I'll help however you need, she said. Just be there, I told her. That's enough. By early afternoon, I had everything set. Nothing fancy, just organized. I moved the metal shelving unit out of the living room and back into the garage myself. Took longer than it should have. The bolts squealed when I loosened them, like they didn't want to move either. I brought my recliner back where it belonged. That mattered more than I expected. Then I set up the TV, hooked my phone to it, tested the connection twice, ran through the clips, made sure they played clean, labeled them in order so I wouldn't fumble when it counted. Rachel stood in the doorway watching me. You've thought this through, she said. I had time, I answered. What about your mom, she asked. She's not going to take this well. No, I said, she's not. And Karen. I almost smiled. Karen will try to talk her way out of it. Rachel crossed her arms, leaning lightly against the frame. And you, she asked, what about me? What are you going to do when they do? I looked at her. Finish what I started, I said. She didn't ask anything else. Around 5:30, the house started filling up. Tom Jenkins came first, wearing the same ball cap he'd had on for the last 10 years and carrying a six-pack like he was showing up for a regular Sunday. Smells better in here, he said as he stepped inside. That's because it is, I said. He gave me a look that said he understood more than I'd explained. A few minutes later, Mrs. Alvarez from down the street arrived. She wasn't officially on the HOA board, but she attended every meeting like she was running for office. Rachel, honey, she said, hugging my wife gently. How's the baby? Better, Rachel said. Thank you. My mother and Karen came out of the guest room last. They looked like they always did when company was overcomposed, polite, ready to play their parts. My mother even smiled at Tom. Well, this is nice, she said. A little family dinner. Karen glanced at the table, then at me. What's the occasion, she asked. I pulled out a chair. Sit down, I said. We ate first. That was important. No one talks well on an empty stomach, and I didn't want them thinking this was some kind of ambush the second they walked in. Dinner was simple. Roast chicken, green beans, mashed potatoes. Rachel cooked, but this time she wasn't alone. I stayed beside her, passing plates, clearing space, doing the small things that should have been happening all along. My mother noticed. Of course she did. You don't usually cook, Mark, she said. I do when it's needed, I answered. Karen barely touched her food. Her eyes kept drifting toward the TV. She knew something was coming. After we finished, I stood up and picked up the remote. Thought we'd look at something, I said. Tom leaned back in his chair. Mrs. Alvarez folded her hands in her lap. Rachel sat still, her hands wrapped around her glass. My mother sighed. Can this wait? We just ate. No, I said. It can't. I turned on the TV. First slide. A photo from last Christmas. All of us in the living room. Lights on the tree, Lily in a red dress, my mother smiling, like everything was exactly how she wanted it. No one said anything. Second slide. A short video clip. Karen at the front door. A man standing outside. She hands him a box. He gives her cash. Karen's fork clinked against her plate. Mark, she started. I held up a hand. Not yet. Third slide. The garage, shelves stacked with boxes. More than what had been in the living room. Labels visible, movement constant. Mrs. Alvarez leaned forward slightly. That's a lot of inventory, she said quietly. Fourth slide. A screenshot. An online storefront page. Address listed as mine. Contact email tied to Rachel. Rachel's name visible. My mother straightened in her chair. This is unnecessary, she said. No, I said, it's overdue. Karen pushed her chair back a few inches. You're blowing this out of proportion, she said. It's just a small business. In a residential neighborhood, Tom said calmly. With traffic. That's an HOA issue. Mrs. Alvarez nodded. And liability if it's under the homeowner's account. Karen looked at them, then back at me. You brought them here for this, she asked. I brought witnesses, I said. My mother stood up. I will not sit here and be humiliated, she said. I stepped slightly to the side, not blocking her, but not moving out of the way either. You're not being humiliated, I said. You're being shown what you chose to ignore. Her eyes flashed. How dare you speak to me like that in front of strangers? They're not strangers, I said. They're the people who will be involved if this keeps going. Karen reached for the remote. I took one step forward. Sit down, I said. She froze. For a second, I thought she might push it anyway. Then she looked at me and something in her face changed. Not fear. Recognition. She sat. I clicked to the next image. A still frame from the footage. My mother standing at the garage door watching the street while Karen completed a transaction. Mrs. Alvarez exhaled softly. Diane, she said, this isn't just helping out. My mother didn't respond. She looked at the screen, then at me. You're choosing them over your own family, she said. I shook my head. No, I said, I'm choosing my family. I gestured toward Rachel and Lily. This is my family. The room went still again. Same silence as before. Different meaning. I set the remote down on the table. This stops tonight, I said. All of it. The business, the deliveries, the use of this house. Karen's jaw tightened, or what? I met her eyes. Or I file a formal complaint with the HOA, I said, and I report the business under Rachel's name as unauthorized use. Rachel didn't flinch this time. That mattered. My mother looked between us. You would do that, she asked. Yes, I said. No hesitation. No apology. Karen leaned back slowly, her confidence draining in real time. This is unbelievable, she muttered. No, I said. What's unbelievable is that you thought I wouldn't notice. No one argued after that. Not really. There were a few words, a few attempts to soften things, to shift blame, to make it smaller than it was. I didn't take the bait. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't repeat myself. And that was enough. Because for the first time they understood something they hadn't before. I wasn't going to bend this time. I wasn't going to smooth it over. I wasn't going to look the other way. Dinner ended quietly. Chairs scraped, plates stacked. People avoided eye contact. Tom clapped me lightly on the shoulder on his way out. Handled that right, he said. Mrs. Alvarez gave Rachel a small, reassuring smile. My mother and Karen stayed where they were. No speeches. No last-minute arguments. Just the weight of what had been said. And what would happen next. They started packing before sunrise. I heard the suitcase wheels first. That low, dragging sound across the hardwood, like something being pulled out of a place it had settled into a little too comfortably. I lay there for a second, staring at the ceiling, listening to it roll down the hallway. Rachel didn't move beside me. She was awake. I could tell by the way her breathing stayed just a little too steady. Do you want me to go out there? She whispered. No, I said. Let them do it. We stayed in bed a few minutes longer than usual. Not talking, not rushing, just letting the house shift around us. When I finally got up, the air felt different. Lighter. Not fixed, not perfect, but different. I stepped into the hallway just as Karen dragged a second suitcase past the living room. She didn't look at me this time. No comments, no eye rolls, just a tight jaw and eyes focused on the door like it was the only thing that mattered. My mother came out of the guest room a minute later with a smaller bag. She stopped when she saw me. For a moment, I thought she might say something, defend herself. Blame Rachel, remind me of everything she'd done for me growing up. Instead, she said, you've made your point. I leaned against the wall. This wasn't about making a point, I said. It felt like it, she replied. It was about stopping something that shouldn't have been happening in the first place. She held my gaze. You could have handled this privately. I tried, I said. You didn't listen. That landed. She looked past me into the living room. The recliner was back where it belonged. The shelves were gone. The space looked like a home again. You've changed, she said. I shook my head. No, I said. I just stopped ignoring things. Karen came back through the hallway, keys in hand. Car's loaded, she said to my mother. Then she looked at me. This didn't have to go this far, she said. It already had, I answered. She opened her mouth and closed it again. For once, she didn't have a comeback. They left without another word. No slammed doors, no dramatic exits. Just the quiet click of the front door closing behind them. I stood there for a second after they were gone. Not celebrating. Not relieved in some big, obvious way. Just still. Then I heard small footsteps behind me. Daddy. Lily stood in the hallway, hair sticking up on one side, clutching her stuffed rabbit. I crouched down and held out my arms. Hey, sweetheart, I said. She walked into me and rested her head on my shoulder. Grandma go, she asked. Yeah, I said gently. Grandma went home. She nodded like that made sense. Kids don't overcomplicate things. Rachel stepped out of the bedroom a moment later, wrapping a sweater around herself. Is it done, she asked. I nodded. It's done. She exhaled slowly. Not a big reaction. Just a release. We spent the rest of the morning putting things back. Not in a rushed way, not like we were trying to erase something. More like we were reclaiming it. I moved the last of the boxes out of the garage and into the driveway for Karen to pick up later. Cleared the folding table, swept the concrete floor. Rachel wiped down the kitchen counters, reorganized the cabinets, threw out things that didn't belong. Lily followed us from room to room, occasionally helping by moving objects 2 inches to the left and declaring it important. By noon, the house felt like ours again. Not just in how it looked, in how it sounded. Quiet but not tense. Open. I sat in my recliner for the first time in over a week. It felt strange at first, then familiar. Rachel brought me a cup of coffee and sat on the armrest like she used to before all this. Thank you, she said. For what? For not letting it keep going, she said. I looked at her. I should have stopped it sooner, I said. Maybe, she said, but you didn't ignore it when it mattered. I nodded. That was probably the best I was going to get. A few days later, I helped Rachel close out the online account. Changed passwords, removed listings, contacted customer support to separate her information from anything Karen had set up. It took time. It always does. Tom stopped by once or twice that week. Things quieted down, he said one afternoon, leaning on the fence. They will, I said. Mrs. Alvarez sent over a plate of homemade cookies just because. Rachel smiled more. Not all at once, but enough that I noticed. About a week after that, my phone rang. My mother. I let it go to voicemail. Then I listened to it. Her voice was different, softer. I just wanted to check on Lily, she said. And I hope you're doing all right. No apology. Not directly. But something had shifted. I didn't call back right away. I needed time. Not to punish her. Just to let things settle into what they were now. Different. Clearer. That Sunday evening, we sat on the back porch. Rachel had her feet tucked under her, a blanket around her shoulders. Lily played with a plastic cup and a spoon like it was the most fascinating thing in the world. The sun dipped behind the houses across the street, turning everything gold for a few minutes. I used to think providing was enough, I said. Rachel looked at me. What do you think now, she asked. I watched Lily laugh at nothing. Now I think protecting matters just as much, I said. Rachel nodded. We sat there a while longer. No rush. No noise. Just the three of us in a house that finally felt like it belonged to the people living in it. And if there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's this. The hardest lines to draw are usually the ones closest to you. But once you draw them, things get clearer. If you've ever had to choose between keeping the peace and doing what's right, you already know how heavy that can feel. Just don't wait too long like I did. Some things don't fix themselves. You have to decide where your home begins and where everyone else stops.